They did?
All right, we're good to go.
All right. Okay, well, good morning, everyone. It is April 29th. This is the Utility, Cable, Telecommunications, and Technology Committee. We are continuing to, of course, operate remotely online. And so what we're going to do is we will do roll call and then read the entire agenda. Ms. Spears will do that. And then after that, we will take a quick 15-minute recess so that we can accept any public comment. If you would like to make any public comment about the agenda items today, just go to council.nola.gov. Once again, that's council.nola.gov. So with that, Ms. Spears, I'll turn it over to you for roll call.
Great. Good morning, council members.
Good morning.
Chair Moreno, present. Councilmember Glapion. Councilmember Banks.
Present.
Councilmember Brissett.
Present.
Councilmember Giarrusso.
Here.
Councilmember, we have 4 members. We have a quorum. I will start reading the agenda. Item 1, roll call. Item 2, approval of the minutes, March 16th, 2021. Item 3, presentation, April 24th, transformer explosion. Entergy New Orleans LLC's E&O will present information about the known causes of the explosion of an underground transformer in downtown New Orleans on Saturday, April 24th. Presentation, January bill spikes. The City Council's utility advisors will present their findings as to the causes of customers' bill increases experienced in January 2021. Item 5, February load shed event. Sub-item A, presentation. The Council Utilities Advisors will present the findings of the forensic investigation into the E&O decisions related to the outages experienced February 16th, 2021. Sub-item B, resolution. The committee will consider a resolution to institute a prudence investigation into E&O's load shed protocols and all events and decisions related to the February 2021 Winter Storm Uri event. Sub-item C, resolution. The committee will consider a resolution directing the advisors to assess the weatherization of generating units serving New Orleans. Item 6, resolution, streamlining docket. The committee will consider a resolution to streamline E&O's reporting requirements. Item 7, adjournment. Council member, that is the agenda.
All right, thank you so much, Ms. Spears. It is 10:03. We're going to do a quick recess to accept additional public comment. So that means I'm going to break for 15 minutes. We'll be back at 10:18. Thank you.
Hey, council, we're back in 2 minutes.
All right, Aaron. Aaron, why don't you go ahead and call roll again to establish the quorum, please?
Great. Chair Moreno, present. Councilmember Giarrusso, present. Councilmember Glapion.
Present.
Councilmember Banks.
Present.
Councilmember Brosset. All right, Councilmember Moreno, we have 4 members. We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you so much, Aaron. Appreciate it. I'll go to agenda item number 2, which is the approval of the minutes of the March 16th, 2021 meeting. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes, please?
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Giarrusso. Can I get a second?
Second.
Seconded by Council Vice President Glapion. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
I think that's all members, Aaron, that are present. Jay, are you an aye on the approval of the minutes?
Councilmember, hearing no objection, I think that's
Perfect, great, thank
4
you.
yeas, no nays.
Appreciate it, thanks, Aaron. All right, let's go to agenda item number 3, which is presentation of the April 24th transformer explosion. This happened this past Saturday. Entergy New Orleans, ENO, will present information about the known causes of the explosion of an underground transformer in downtown New Orleans on Saturday, April 24th. And that also led to a power outage throughout the downtown area that I believe lasted until past midnight that evening. So with that, I see Ms. Knox is on. So Ms. Knox, I don't know if you're going to be doing this presentation or someone else from your team, but you can go ahead and introduce yourself and get us started. I'm having a little trouble hearing you.
Probably a lot of trouble since I was on mute. So apologies. Good morning, everyone. Becky Knox, Vice President of Regulatory Affairs here at Entergy New Orleans. Thank you all so much. We appreciate the opportunity to be here with you all this morning to address your questions regarding the recent event of April 24th. At the outset of the presentation today, I would like to ask that, or let you all know that we are still very early in our investigation. We do recognize the gravity of the event and the safety issues involved here, and we are doing all we can to investigate the situation thoroughly and get to the bottom of what happened as soon as possible. We've seen several reports in the media that this has been a transformer explosion, but given that we have yet to confirm that it was actually the transformer that caused the fire, but more investigation is needed. We do appreciate your patience in allowing us the time to complete that investigation into what happened. And we appreciate the time today to provide the council with a more complete timeline of the events and all the information that we have currently available today. So with that, I'd like to turn it over and introduce our speakers. Today, we'll be hearing from Mr. John Hawkins, our Vice President of Distribution Operations, and from Ms. Sandra Miller, Vice President of Customer Services. So with that, John, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Becky. And good morning, council members and council chair Moreno. And I'll just go ahead and start by walking through a timeline of the events on the night of April 24. At approximately 8:50 p.m., we received notice from our DOC, our Distribution Operations Center, that we had a breaker interruption. That was followed by a second breaker interruption, with both being from our Notre Dame network within the CBD. At this time, no customers were impacted. However, we immediately dispatched crews to investigate. Then around 9 p.m., our DOC was contacted by the New Orleans Police Department, informing them that there was a fire near our Entergy facilities at the corner of Natchez and Magazine. Our crews arrived at the site roughly 10 minutes following that call and quickly assessed that the fire was coming from one of our underground electrical vaults. The team worked quickly with the on-site personnel and made the decision to de-energize the entire Notre Dame grid, which involved removing service to approximately 1,500 customers in order to preserve public safety, as well as prevent further damage to the electrical facilities. Once the fire was extinguished, the crews tested the vault for combustible gases to ensure that it was safe for entry. Once deemed safe, they entered and began clearing the equipment that had been damaged by the fire, which would allow them to restore service to the customers that were currently impacted. Service was restored just shortly after midnight, with the total outage duration being roughly 3 hours and 20 minutes. Immediately following, we reached out to our environmental vendor to begin the next steps of making the vault safe for our workers to begin removing equipment. This started on Sunday morning and was completed in its entirety yesterday. The environmental service removes the liquid debris and oil from the vault, which clears the way for our crews to begin their portion of the debris removal, which would then allow them to start prepping the damaged equipment to be removed. These vaults are considered confined spaces, so things don't move as quickly as if they were out in the open, with no more than 2 or 3 people to be able to safely move around in the vault at any given time. Late yesterday, we were able to get the damaged equipment removed from the ground, where it has now been moved to our 2-lane facility, so our subject matter experts can begin their hands-on investigation. As we performed our preliminary visual investigation, we were able to notice a terminal chamber that houses the primary connections was not in its proper position. However, given the tight spaces, we couldn't investigate further or draw any other conclusions given the need to have the equipment removed. But now that it has, this is taking place, so we can quickly work towards identifying the cause of the event. If for any reason our investigation is inconclusive, as there was a lot of heat in the vault that night, we would then work towards sending the damaged equipment off to a third-party lab for analysis. I do suspect that our SMEs will be able to ascertain, but we should know more soon, in which we will provide updates as they become available.
Hey, John, I have a question. So can you repeat again, what was not in the proper position when you did your first visual assessment? I just didn't catch it.
It's a terminal chamber that houses the primary connections. It's like where the cables, the electrical cables go and meet the transformer, kind of where they tie together.
And why would that not be in the proper position?
Well, what I don't know, Council Chair, is if due to the heat dispositioned it, or if it was because that's where the event started. So that's what we're identifying today.
Gotcha. So, yeah, that makes sense. So could it have been human error that put that terminal changer in the wrong spot?
No, I wouldn't state it as human error. One thing I'll tell you about this council chair, that equipment is submersible because, you know, our manhole and vaults, they fill up with water. So those are sealed units. So that no one would have ever left that in that state. And it was more deformed, not versus where somebody had left some bolts or things out of place. So I certainly don't think at this time that it was human error.
Gotcha. And so the electrical vault, now you said you removed the damaged equipment. As far as the electrical vault goes, was it everything in it a total loss, or is there any equipment that could be salvaged? What does the cost look like as far as equipment lost?
Did you ask about the cost?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I will tell you there was a lot of heat in that vault, and we will need to rebuild that entire vault where we had 2 transformers in there as well as electrical cables. And I'll tell you, the approximate price on those transformers is about $100,000 each.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So, you know, several $100,000 worth of damage to that vault.
Yes, ma'am.
Gotcha. I've personally never seen something like this happen before. Has this ever happened before? An explosion underground like this?
Well, I will tell you these types of events are not routine, are very infrequent. And when I asked, a lot of folks are going off of memories, do you recall a situation like this? And there was a recollection of a situation where I can't say it was as hot or as, explosive as this in 2013 was the last time that came to memory. Again, very infrequent and not routine type, situations for us, especially in this network environment that we have within the CBD.
Gotcha. And how long do you think it'll take? Well, actually, I'm looking at your timeline here. It looks like for the internal investigation, another 2 weeks to figure out exactly what went wrong.
Well, Council Chair, what I'll tell you about that, just to clarify, that 2 weeks is to get you a report, a detailed report. As soon as we understand and have better insight to what the cause was, we will share that immediately. So within the next, I envision, if not today, the next couple of days, that we're sharing that information. But that 2 weeks was meant to have a prepared report sent over to you.
Gotcha. Thank you, Mr. Hawkins.
Yes, ma'am.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Councilmember Banks.
Thank you. Good morning, John. I'm looking at the timeline and at the assessment and next steps. And while I fully understand that no one anticipated the transformer blowing up, you had no control over that, but you do have control over the communications that take place that happened that were needed because the transformer blew up. Where on the timeline does it come in that folks were notified of what was happening, and not just the news people? You've got the chair of the Council Utilities Committee, you've got the city council that regulates your utility, you've got the district councilman. Where on the timeline were we notified?
And Councilmember Banks, we do have another slide that Ms. Sandra was going to speak to regarding the communications that was going to speak to that. If you like, I'd go ahead and transition it over to her to answer that question.
Okay, that's fine.
Sandra, are you on with us?
Yeah, I think she's on mute on her PC. We're trying to get it resolved. Just a second.
Can you hear me, Councilmember Banks?
Yes.
Okay, I don't want to be the one who's always technology challenged, so bear with me.
No, that's my job. I'm the one technology challenged.
So in direct answer to your question, I will say that the follow-up to the council members did not occur until the following morning. And so there's some opportunities for us to improve those communications. I've had discussions with the Cura office, myself and Ms. Knox, to be able to develop a parallel path when those events are occurring, that we are simultaneously contacting council offices, in particular the districts that are impacted. I will say in this case, we do have customer service managers who do reach out to council offices who are impacted by an outage in their area up to a certain threshold. So we're going to be working with the Cura office together to better understand how much information and when council offices would like to receive, and we're going to do a better job of making sure we're providing that real-time information to council offices. But if you allow me, can I tell you about the communication that we actually had on that night? And really, I really want to. But go ahead, Councilman Banks.
Well, no, and I appreciate you talk about what you actually did. But on the point you just made, when we get calls, our constituents are looking for us for answers, and it makes it rather difficult if you got to stand there and hunch your shoulders and say, I don't know. That does not put us in a good light. So I would certainly appreciate. And hopefully there will be no more crises, no more emergencies, no more anything like this. But whenever this does present itself, I think that we need to be in the front of the line so that when we do receive the calls, we can actually relay accurate information, because folks are reaching out to us, asking us what's happening. So I thank you for making that a part of your protocol moving forward. And it needs to be at the top of the list that the citizens need to be notified. Obviously, the media needs to be notified, and we need to be right there too. So, you can go on and talk about what did happen, but moving forward, we got to make sure that this doesn't happen again.
Absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly. We understand constituents are calling your offices as well. And obviously on the night of the event, our goal was to make sure the customers were informed and that those individuals in the area were informed. And going forward, we'll make sure that we do a better job of having a parallel path of making sure council offices are also informed of these types of, and this was a high-profile event that occurred in the French Quarter, obviously, and this does not happen often. And so, absolutely, we'll make sure council offices are cued in to those events and know what's happening as real time as we know it.
Thank you.
And real quick, Sandra, Councilmember Banks, I want to follow up on what he just mentioned. I think what would be really useful for the council, because we've talked about communication issues many times now. I think what would be really useful is if you all put together what are your protocols for communicating when there is some type of an emergency, and send that over to the council. So we see, exactly who is, part of this team that's going to be not only alerting customers and the media, but also, of course, alerting us, the council. So, when something like this is happening, Sandra, are we expecting to hear from you? Are we expecting to hear from Becky? Who is it going to be coming from? Just so that everyone's on the same page as to what the protocols are for communication during an emergency situation.
Sure, we can absolutely do that. And I will go one step further and say we'll also engage with you in the Cura office to make sure we better understand how you would like to see that communication, because that's important to us as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sandra.
Well, just if you'll indulge me for a few moments, I do want to tell you about the work of the distribution, operations, communications, and customer service teams on the night of the fire, and to talk about some of the learnings from this event. One of which is we already discussed, making sure we're having more communication with the council offices as well. But that night, we did have those customer service and distribution operations teams as boots on the ground, speaking with local businesses, keeping them informed about the incident and the estimated times of restoration. I will state that we received numerous compliments from businesses in the area regarding our communications in the field with those customers. We also provided information about the estimated restoration time on our view outage map And customers did, in fact, visit that site to receive up-to-date information regarding the outage status. That night, our communications team did work with local TV outlets as well as NOAA.com to communicate safety protocols following the fire and outage information in order to provide that information to customers more broadly. We followed up with statements to all local media the next morning with updated information for the morning news, and we posted information about the event on social media to provide another channel for customers to receive an update. I did receive a call from a customer impacted by the outage, indicated that they did not receive an alert from the company regarding the outage. And I do want to clarify that those customers who live in the CBD do not receive automated alert messages because they are on what's called a mesh network configuration that includes a lot of redundancies, so our systems cannot precisely model outages in that area. For example, if a feeder circuit becomes de-energized, another feeder will provide power to customers in this area. And this type of configuration provides a high degree of reliability for our customers, and they're typically found in densely populated areas, such as downtown areas of a city. Those areas rarely lose power. So we're working to build a model in order to better predict with accuracy which customers have power and those who are out based on their connectivity to various feeders in that system. But because we understand that this is a potential customer friction in the rare event an outage occurs, in the interim, we work with our distribution operations, communications, and customer experience team to create a file with all the customers in this network system in order to proactively message customers in this area should an outage occur. Now, this is similar to the proactive messaging that we send out during a storm event. But do understand that because those customers are served by multiple feeders and could still have power, that message will indicate that that customer may be without power due to work being performed in the area, and we'll provide updates throughout the event. As we often discuss, as we're discussing here today, communicating with our customers is very important to us. So when we see an opportunity for improvement, that is exactly what we do. And we appreciate the opportunity to continue to work with this council as we make systems improvements, process improvements that provide a positive experience for our customers. And that's all I have, council member.
Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate it, Sandra. All right, if there are no more comments or questions from anyone from Entergy or the council, we'll move to our next agenda item. Any other comments? Brian, I saw you come on. Good. All right. Going once, twice. All right, we're moving on to the next agenda item. Thank you. All right. Let me get this quick full view. Okay. Next agenda item is agenda item number 4, presentation on the January bill spikes. As we all know, the January bill spikes that occurred came as a really big surprise to Entergy New Orleans customers. And, you know, as we also know from many of these customers, for thousands of them, in fact, these spikes were actually pretty unaffordable for them. So we as regulators, we know that it is essential that we determine if these increased bills were fair and accurate. And it's for that purpose that I instructed our technical team in Quorum to conduct a thorough analysis of this winter's bills to see if we can find any type of pattern of errors or any improvements that can be made to ensure that these vast swings in monthly bills will not catch people off guard. So in the report that Mr. Joe Rogers will present to us in just a second, I want to give you just a quick synopsis of it, of what we found. So we found that more than 3,800 people saw a January month-over-month increase of $200 to $300, while over 15,000 residential customers had an increase of $100. That represents approximately 10% of residential customers. About 300 people had increases of over $400. I'm going to, of course, let Joe Rogers go more into detail about this, but I do want to suggest some changes that I believe are really important to really tenaciously move forward with. And one is I do plan to direct Quorum to determine a method to ensure that residential customers with a bill spike defined as a $100 increase month over month undergo an automatic investigation by Entergy New Orleans to ensure that their meter is functioning and that there aren't any extenuating or unusual circumstances causing an inaccurate bill. Number two, I will be sending a letter to Entergy New Orleans directing them to automatically enable billing notifications early in the monthly cycle to warn customers of bills that are potentially larger than average so that customers are able to adjust their behavior. And number three, and I think that this one is actually really key here. I also want to work with our team to devise a directive to Entergy New Orleans to formally conduct an independent audit and certification of the AMI deployment so that we ensure that the data being delivered from these automatic meters is being properly processed and calculated into accurate bills. So with that, Mr. Rogers, I'm going to turn it over to you to proceed with your presentation. And good morning to you.
Good morning. Can everyone see and hear me?
Yep, we got you, Joe.
Excellent. Council members, Council Chair, I will try not to go over some of the stuff that you've already gone over, but I'm going to walk through the presentation.
It's worth repeating. It's okay.
All right. As the Council Chair mentioned, we received a bunch of bill spikes, but the Council in February had Entergy before it for a special utility committee meeting to explain the bill spikes. At that meeting, Entergy New Orleans indicated that it was primarily, the bill spike amounts were primarily due to dramatically increased energy usage due to cold weather. However, at that meeting, they were unable to provide any information on the number of customers impacted or the magnitude of the impacts. And so the council directed Quorum and the advisors to look into the matter. And we obtained some data from Entergy for all residential customers, December bills and January bills. And what we wanted to look at is, one, could we replicate the calculations? We wanted to look at the magnitude of the bill increases. We wanted to look at the number of customers affected. And then lastly, we wanted to look and see if we could see any trends that might explain the bill increase that may, indicate that it was something other than weather that may have caused it. We wanted to look by residence type. Did it happen to people in houses more, or duplexes or apartments? We wanted to look at neighborhoods. The narrowest we could nail down on neighborhoods was by zip code. We wanted to look at the type of service, whether they had electric service or whether they had electric and gas service as well. And we also wanted to look at, see whether the billing cycle had, an impact on the bill spikes. Essentially, what we did is when we first got the data, just a little bit about our analysis. When we first got the data, we were focused on analyzing the bill spikes. So we culled the data a little bit. We eliminated records such as final bills and customers without December and January bills because we wouldn't be able to see the spike. And so we analyzed roughly 160,000 residential customer records. The first thing that we did is we kind of looked and said, well, does it make sense? Does the gas portion of the bill and the electric portion of the bill add up to the total bill? And that looked good. The next thing we did was bill replication. We replicated all of the appropriate riders and tariffs, the fuel adjustment charge, the PPCR, the EFRP, all of those riders. We took and we did calculations on those, and we were able to replicate the majority of the bills to within less than 5 cents and 98% of the bills within 1%. Now, there were some variances in some of those bills. Obviously, we didn't get 100%. And I think that is due to the levelized billing options and optional tariffs that we didn't have any information about in that data set that would have led us to conclude that. But that's one of the things that I kind of want to look into, and I'll see it in my recommendations going forward with Eno, so I can understand what customers got levelized billings, what customers have green power options, net metering, advanced metering, all of that. So long and the short of it, based on the review of the customer records, it appears that the calculations substantially correctly reflect the council's authorized rates. But I got to qualify that. And, our analysis was based on the Eno reported energy use that they gave us in the data set. And there was no way with that data set for me to independently verify the accuracy of those readings, of those usage readings, CCF and kilowatt hour readings. And I'll actually address that later in my recommendations. The next thing we took a look at, I'm sorry, was there a question? All right. The next thing we took a look at is the factors affecting the bill spikes. Based on just looking at the records that we analyzed, electric sales increased by 39% and gas sales increased by 110%. This increased usage, some of the factors, we had the colder weather. Depending upon the billing cycle, customers experienced between roughly 133 and 272 more heating degree days when you compare their two bills.
Hey, Joe, you need to go to your next slide.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. There you go.
I've got notes and slides and I coordinated. The other thing that, and just for reference, a heating degree day, is measured by the number of degrees at the average daily temperature was below 65 degrees. So if you had an average temperature of the day of 40, that would equate to 25 heating degree days. So the heating degrees kind of tell you how cold it was and how long it persisted. We also had another factor that the majority of customers experienced a 2 to 4 day increase in their billing cycle between the 2 months. Some of the other things we looked at, we did look at everything. We looked at the fuel adjustment clause, the purchase power cost recovery rider, the PGA. We looked at all of that, but none of that would have had more than, say, about a $15 increase on a typical bill. And so that would not have lended itself to the bill spikes that we saw. So based on what the data that we have thus far, it appears that the extended cold weather drove the usage and the bill spikes. That said, given that I'm not able to verify at this time the energy usage, I do believe it would be appropriate to take the opportunity to check and confirm that the AMI interaction with the billing program is operating as expected. And I will discuss that a little bit more in my recommendations. A little bit about observations and kind of what we found when we started looking for trends in the data and looking for reasons why, other than whether someone may have experienced a bill spike. And what we had to do first is we had to come up with a definition of a bill spike. And the definition we came up with was both a doubling of billing from December to January, and that doubling of billing had to be greater than a $100 increase. And so that's how we define bill spikes, just for the purposes of our analysis. Now, to kind of put that $100 increase in perspective and to put usage in perspective.
Hey, Joe, go to your next slide. There you go.
Oh. Thank you, Erin. It's nice to have help. To put that in perspective a little bit, I've got a 1500 watt heater, portable space heater in my basement. And if I was to run that for a whole month, that would increase my bill or my usage by about 1,100 kilowatt hours. That 1,100 kilowatt hours would roughly translate to a doubling of a typical customer's bill, and it would be more than $100 as well. So that's just kind of just in a way of thinking about it. If it was really cold in my house and it was cold for the whole month, and I had to use that heater just to keep myself warm, that could easily lead to a doubling of what would be my typical bill, or $100 increase in my bill. Based on this definition, based on this definition, we note that 11% of the 160,000 customers analyzed experienced a January bill spike. Most were in the $100 to $200 range. You see the table down there, and you spoke a little bit to this, Chair Moreno, but for those customers with higher bill impacts, $200, $300 and above, that should, I recommend that we need to take a look into those in a little more detail. I think Eno should look into those directly, including probably contacting the customers if they have not yet done so. I'll talk about that a little bit more in my recommendations, but other than noting, that the majority of bill spikes were in the $100 to $200 range, there's no other conclusions that I can draw at this time from this slide, other than, we got to look into some of these higher ones. Next slide. Thank you. The next thing we took a look at is the bill spikes by what type of housing stock folks lived in, whether they lived in a house or a duplex or an apartment. And in looking at this data, we see that the bill spikes were more common for customers in houses and duplexes than other structures. This makes sense to me, and I think it's consistent with eventually cold weather driving the increase. Next slide, please. Next, we took a look at the percent of customers. I wanted to look at neighborhoods, but all I could get really was zip code information. And so it's an approximation of neighborhoods. There's many more neighborhoods than there are zip codes in New Orleans. But I wanted to take a look at each zip code and see if I could see any trends where folks experience more hardship in one area than another, and what may be some of the reasons for that. When I look at this map, the percent is the percent of people in that zip code that experienced a bill spike. And when I look at this, you can see that the two darkest areas, 23% and 26%, in the middle of the chart there, it looks like the 23% Algiers, and it looks like the 26% was the lower Ninth and upper Ninth and Bywater areas of New Orleans. And I believe that this is kind of expected and likely explained by housing stock, which is older, homes that may not have been upgraded yet with respect to windows, insulation, newer, more efficient heating. So I think what we see in this map is also kind of what we expected to see, if the bill increase was associated with weather. Next slide, please.
Wait, can we stop here for a second? I'm sorry.
It's great.
I guess, Joe, these numbers though are all over the place. I mean, you have like sort of Uptown Carrollton, which is at 4%, Marleyville 3%, and then you go to Lakefront and Gentilly, which is a little under 10 and 15. I mean, I guess I'm struggling with how come some of the percentages seem so incredibly low, and then some of them seem so much higher. And I'm just, I mean, is insulation the only explanation?
Well, I don't know that insulation is the only explanation. I suspect in some of the older historic homes, you can't do certain things to improve your building envelope. In other areas of the city where it's not as historic, and there's more, I will say, bigger homes. I think that some of those probably have a little bit better level of insulation than some of the ones in these identified areas. But I have no other explanation than housing stock, when I looked at this data.
Okay, thank you.
I think too, Joe, it may be both Joes, I guess. I'm just looking at this map, and I was actually talking to my chief of staff about this because I too, Joe, I found this map interesting in some ways, but troubling in others. It seems that those who can really afford and focus in on energy efficiency saw the least amount of increases, and those that may not be able to. And also where there could be additional, even rental stock in some of these neighborhoods are seeing the higher increases. I mean, what this map tells me here, and I hope that Entergy is seeing this map and seeing where they need to do additional work on outreach, is there needs to be an additional focus on some of these areas where the spikes are so high. Additional outreach, really focusing in on, small efficiencies that can be achieved by any homeowner. I want to remind everyone that Energy Smart, which is a program through the council, it allows for there to be an assessment of anyone's home or apartment to see what efficiencies can be obtained. But I do think that this map is very, like I said, interesting yet troubling in some ways too.
Thank you. The next thing, we took a look at the map again, but this time we came into the map and we wanted to say, okay, of all the bill spikes calculated, what was the average bill spike amount for each zip code? And this map is different than the other map in that there's not that wide dispersion across the map. The numbers are fairly closer together, in comparison with what we saw on the earlier map. It looks like some of the highest average bill spikes amounts in the General French Quarter Warehouse District there, and then up in Mid-City. Looks like the lightest one on the map there, in the 165 that you see the light color there, that looks like that might be roughly the Treme neighborhood. And so the bill spikes across the, well, they didn't have a great disparity across all of the zip codes, and there were similar averages. I would note that a $180 bill spike certainly does not create a burden to all zip codes equally. There are definitely some areas that experienced a higher burden with a same $180 bill spike.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I think this is a really telling slide as well, because I mean, throughout the city, the increases were anywhere between like 165 to, a little bit over 200. But Joe, to your point, you're absolutely right. I mean, the fact that, some of our very poorest neighborhoods had the same impact as some of our more affluent neighborhoods, you're absolutely right. I mean, it affects people completely differently. A single mother working 2 jobs with, 2 kids. I mean, this type of bill impact can be devastating for her and for many families throughout the city. So yeah, this is why it is so key that we must have these early notifications for individuals to see that, look, your bills may be going up. And that's what, and the other piece too, I mean, Joe, like you just initially mentioned, and I mentioned in my opening comments too, it's also incredibly important that we make sure that with the spikes that we're seeing here, that AMI has been calculated correctly, that it is programmed correctly, that there aren't these type of inaccuracies, because people shouldn't be paying these types of amounts for power that maybe they didn't accurately get charged for. So anyway, I know that it wasn't really a question, it was more of a comment, but it is you know, a telling slide. Councilmember Drew, I saw you popped on.
Yeah, I can we go back one slide, because I guess I'm just struggling to reconcile. So it looks like it says experienced a bill spike, and I'm just looking, I guess, at sort of the southwest corner, 2%, and then can we go forward to the next slide? And yet it says $179. So I'm just trying to wrap my head around 2% and why it's $179 higher.
I guess maybe, and maybe I need to, the zip code, if the previous slide that has the percent of customers within each zip code that experienced a bill spike, that's the, if you have, you know, if you have 100 customers in that zip code, 10 of those customers experienced a bill spike, that would be 10%. So the percents aren't the percent, you know, across the whole city. They are the number of folks in that zip code that experienced a bill spike. When you go to the next page, it says, okay, everybody that experienced a bill spike in that zip code, we're going to add up those bill spikes, divide them by the number of people in that zip code, and that is going to be the dollar value of the average bill spike for that zip code. And so the two, to some extent, you know, are totally independent and can't be equated. They're two totally different ways of looking at something.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to, unless we have other comments, I'd like to turn to my recommendations, if that's appropriate at this time.
Go ahead, Joe.
With respect to recommendations, you know, we still got a little bit of follow-up to do. We recommend advisors do a little more follow-up with respect to some of the data and records we've got. There were some negative bills that didn't make sense, a number of records. And we want to get more information, like I talked about earlier, on, you know, who's on the levelized billing, who's on other optional programs such as net metering, green power options, and other. And I guess when I say who is on that, any information that I get from Entergy does not reveal to me any customer information. It does not reveal to me any individuals, addresses, any of that information. So just to be clear, you know, I'm talking about receiving these records and analyzing these records, but I really don't know, you know, who's on the other end of the service. Our recommendations are that, you know, should individually investigate the bill spikes that were higher. I've got above $500 here. I'd even consider, say, above $300. They should, you know, take a look at all of those bill spikes, contact the customers, speak with them, and report back to the council on what they found out. If the customer, when they contact them, says, yeah, it was cold in my house, I had 2 space heaters on for in each of my children's bedrooms, and that's why, or that could have been why I had higher usage. You know, we just want them to look into that, and that's something that I need, you know, to do, because you know, I don't have any customer contact, and they have that ability. I believe at a minimum, you know, we should also do a verification of the AMI. And it sounded like when you were speaking earlier, you wanted to go a little bit farther, Chair Moreno. But, you know, at a minimum, I think they should, you know, select a statistically significant number of customer records and look at the raw data and look at the customer record data and customer billing data and make sure all of that is consistent. But I understand what you said. You might want to go farther, Chair.
Yeah, I think AMI, checking into that, I think is really important. And, you know, I really would want some type of independent audit of that, you know, so it's not just Entergy giving us information, but I really want kind of an independent audit to get in there and really check to make sure that everything's, you know, being calculated correctly and programmed right. And just so that we, the council, have assurance that AMI is working correctly in the city, but more importantly, that customers who are right now doubtful of AMI can, you know, gain trust in the AMI system, considering that it's been deployed throughout the city pretty much. So yes, I would like to take it a step further than your recommendation.
Perfect. The other thing, and we kind of hit on it when we were looking at the maps and looking at the disparities in the maps and whatnot, is that I think this is also a call to get, you know, to make customers aware of their optional billing tariffs and their potential to mitigate those spikes. You know, as council members mentioned, you know, this is probably also a step up your increased efforts with respect to what can I offer customers in these areas with respect to Energy Smart and ways that they can mitigate their usage. Last slide, please. The other big thing that comes out of this, and it's really, we heard about it in when we were talking about the transformer or the vault fire earlier today, communication. When we talked about load shed in the past, communication. We're talking about bills now, communication. It's a thread that's really running through all of these issues that the council is dealing with right now. And you know, our recommendation with respect to bill spikes is that the council instruct ENO to develop a plan for notifying the council and customers when they might be getting a spike in their bill, whether energy usage is up, whether they see heating degree days, or even in the summer, whether we see cooling degree days going up. There's got to be a way that we can have that ENO can notify its customers in advance, and they got to leverage their AMI deployment. We've got real-time data coming in on AMI, and you know, I know that there are some capabilities in AMI that already exist for individual customers. They've got the My Energy customer portal, and they got the My Advisor energy savings tool. But this is only a subset of all customers, and it's on an opt-in basis. We've got to, you know, and I believe that ENO needs to figure out a way to leverage this AMI data so that customers not only can be individually informed, but customers can be widely informed. We've noticed that all of our, you know, we're going, say energy's going through the month and we're saying, oh, look, energy usage is up for everybody on our AMI system. You know, they ought to be able to notify everybody globally that chances are bills are going to be higher. And so I think the council should require ENO to develop a plan for notifications and develop a plan for leveraging this AMI deployment so that it goes just beyond an opt-in type of thing in the user's portal on the internet. And we'll take any more questions. I think we've handled a lot of them along the way, but I'll take any more questions if you've got any.
Any council members have any questions? I don't see any additional questions. Joe, thank you for your presentation. I do believe we have some public comments. So Aaron, I'll turn it over to you.
Remember, we have one comment. The comment is from Logan Burke. She notes that she is staff with the Alliance for Affordable Energy. Thank you for taking these unmanageable bill spikes seriously. In particular, the Alliance supports the recommendations for greater communication with customers in advance of extreme weather and mid-billing cycle. The promises that were associated with advanced metering infrastructure, including digital billing systems and communication tools, can only become a reality if all of the tools are put to use. Since New Orleanians are paying for the suite of technologies that fall under AMI, We encourage Entergy to use them in a way that provides the returns and benefits that were the foundation of the approval for this modernized system. The recommendation to conduct individual investigations on extreme bill spikes is an important one. I have spoken personally with residents with these kinds of bills and our view that an investigation is necessary to pinpoint these problems. From the advisor's presentation, the analysis thus far appears to have been on the energy use reported and final bills received. However, without analysis of the meters in these cases, potential concerns with multipliers or other new system flaws, it is impossible for customers to trust that the system is working properly. Trust in the systems that impact our daily lives is crucial. So we commend the council for this analysis and support the recommendations for further investigation. Councilmember, that is the only comment.
All right, Aaron, thank you. And thank you, Joe, for your presentation. Appreciate it. All right, members, we're going to move on to agenda item number 5, which is the February load shed event. We're going to proceed kind of in this order. We're going to have a presentation from the utility advisors on the findings of their forensic investigation. Then B, I will take up a resolution to consider a prudence investigation into ENO's load shed protocols and the events that led to their decisions from the February 2021 Winter Storm Uri event. And then C, I'll take up an additional resolution for consideration directing our advisors to continue to assess the weatherization of generating units serving New Orleans. And let me just make a few comments here as we move on to this agenda item. It, of course, gives me no pleasure to be here again, instituting a former prudence review to determine if we must penalize Entergy New Orleans for their clear mistakes that, in this case, unnecessarily plunged thousands of New Orleanians into the dark on one of the coldest nights of the year. The preliminary report from our advisors does indicate that Entergy New Orleans' basic technical errors and poor planning put New Orleanians at risk. And that, of course, is unacceptable. We demand better from Entergy New Orleans, and we expect it. When they fall short, there must be consequences. Our Curo and technical legal advisors will now proceed in a formal investigation, and pending the results of that investigation, recommend any appropriate sanctions to ensure corrective action is taken by Entergy New Orleans and that it never happens again. That'll be the resolution that we'll consider. Also want to quickly talk about the resolution on weatherization. We, of course, watched the extraordinary events in Texas around the same time as our February blackout event with great concern. The lack of weatherization and preparation in Texas left many generating units unavailable when they were needed most. To prevent anything like that from happening here, I have previously asked our advisor team to review and assess the resilience of the generation fleet that serves New Orleanians to give us clear comfort that we won't face what millions of Texans have faced: blackouts, infrastructure failures, and even death. Due to additional information that our advisor team needs, we do need a formal resolution coming from the council so that they can acquire this additional data and bring back to us a full report on weatherization for these generating units. So with that, I will turn it over to our advisor team for their initial presentation. This is section 5A. The council's utility advisors will present the findings of the forensic investigation into the ENO decisions related to the outages experienced February 16, 2021. Hey, Mr. Vince, good to see you this morning. I will turn it over to you and your team.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair Moreno, and good morning, council members. My name is Clint Vince. I chair Denton's energy practice. I'm joined today by Basile Udo, who is our lead on the investigation, and Joe Rogers, who is the council's lead technical advisor. Under the council's direction, we conducted a forensic investigation of Entergy's load shedding events that occurred on February 16th, which was Mardi Gras evening. I'll give a very quick overview, and then Basile will take us through the essential elements of our investigation, and Joe will provide any technical information or answers to questions that are needed. What I'm going to try to do is not speak in technical jargon. Our report does require a lot of technical language. What I'm going to try to do is just initially simplify the entire situation. The bottom line is that our investigation revealed some very serious failures by Entergy, including their technical operations and also their communications. The failures are serious, and we are recommending that the council proceed with a full prudence investigation, which would include opening a docket and initiating a fully transparent evidentiary proceeding. The Curo, as Council Chair Moreno has mentioned, has prepared a resolution that would allow this to go forward should you agree with the advisor's recommendation. In a nutshell, Entergy caused outages for 4 times the number of customers that were needed. In practical terms, this means that Entergy shut off power to 25,000 customers instead of 7,800. And instead of sharing the burden of the event proportionally with Entergy Louisiana customers, Entergy New Orleans customers bore the brunt of the burden in a very disproportionate way. To make matters worse, Entergy shut off a critical feeder to a sewerage and water board unit, which, as the council well knows, provides potable water to New Orleans. Further compounding the series of missteps, Entergy failed to warn New Orleanians that a load shedding outage was occurring until minutes before the event actually ended, which was 140 minutes later. So there were technical failures which created outages for 4 times the number of people that were required. There were mislabeled feeders that allowed or required New Orleans to receive a disproportionate burden of the load shed in comparison to Entergy Louisiana customers. There were problems with the load metering equipment, which was faulty and produced inaccurate readings, so that an additional portion of the customers received outages. I mentioned the critical feeder to sewerage and water board that was improperly shut off, and Entergy's communications failed to warn and protect New Orleans customers in a timely way. That's why your advisors are unanimous in recommending a prudence investigation with potential fines. Mr. Udo will now take us through the essential elements and details of the investigation supported by Joe Rogers.
Thank you, Clint. Clint's summary really is very concise and sort of lets me start at the point of where we started our investigation itself. As everybody knows, the background, there was a point at which the council decided that the appropriate thing to do would be to conduct this investigation, and pursuant to that council mandate, we conducted the initial investigation within the 45-day time frame that the council asked us to do it in. I will say we got a high level of cooperation from the E&O lawyers in trying to get the information we needed within the shortened time frame that we had. One thing that's worth noting, though, is because of the shortened time frame, most of the information that we got was designated as highly sensitive protected material, HSPM, which, again, because of the shortened time frame, we couldn't really debate a lot of that. There were some instances where that designation was lifted at our request so that we could disclose in more detail some of the information, but that could affect our ability to answer some of the questions today, particularly for Joe on the technical side. And I wanted to make the council aware of that. The investigation, as Clint pointed out, really developed into 2 distinct areas: the technical issues and the communications issues. On the technical side, it was clear that an automatic load shed program had mislabeled some feeders. that caused E&O customers to be disconnected, and a load shed is basically that, disconnecting customers when other non-New Orleans customers should have been disconnected, and that accounted for about 60 megawatts of the overshedding. It was also determined that annual reviews of that system failed to discover this error, perhaps for decades. Also, as Clint pointed out, one E&O substation inaccurately measured the amount of power being disconnected, causing another 19 megawatts to be borne by E&O customers, which shouldn't have been. The investigation also determined that the order in which customers were disconnected was not consistent with E&O's protocol and didn't properly protect some critical customers. The most obvious example, Surge and Waterboard. We also looked into the concern about weatherization, and while E&O owned generation units were available during the event, the advisors concluded that the additional weatherization review is necessary in order to get the level of comfort that I think the council is looking for. On the communication side, it was determined that E&O has no independent control over its communications, which are controlled by an agreement between E&O and Entergy Services LLC, which is a separate Entergy company. And although they were more frequent and more detailed communications sent to customers of other Entergy companies, there was a total lack of useful information and warnings tailored to New Orleans until, as Clint said, minutes before the event had concluded. The advisor's conclusion in the initial report is that both technical and communications defaults were the responsibility of E&O. Neither the technical nor the communications failures occurred due to an emergency, but actually resulted from actions that should have been taken prior to any emergency, but were not. And as a result, as Clint pointed out, 18,000 more customers were disconnected than should have been, and none of the 25,000 disconnected customers received any useful prior warnings or other information until near the end of the event. Our recommendations, the main recommendation, of course, is to open a docket to conduct a prudent investigation of E&O's conduct in the event. In that docket, we'll receive some information that we were not able to receive during the limited time frame of the initial investigation, but it will also include other information that we feel like we need to dig into a little bit deeper, such as critical customer lists, to intensify the factual analysis and findings. The docket will also create a comprehensive record that can accommodate true HSPM materials and at the same time verify whether the corrective actions that E&O reports it has taken have actually occurred. The docket would also focus on trying to identify ways to disentangle E&O from Entergy Services' control of its communications to ensure that E&O customers always receive timely and useful New Orleans specific information. And of course, the final conclusion or significance of the investigation would be to determine if E&O acted imprudently or otherwise fell below an acceptable standard of conduct. And from that, make the kinds of recommendations that Clint alluded to in terms of penalties or other recommendations. As to weatherization, the resolution that the committee will consider today is also a result of the initial advisor's report, and that's intended to conduct a separate assessment of weatherization to better determine whether E&O related generation units are permanently configured to withstand extreme weather conditions. And that's the summary of our report, and we're certainly prepared to answer any questions.
Well, thank you, Mr. Vince, Mr. Udo. I appreciate you all working so diligently, and Joe as well, Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers, did you want to say something on this as well?
No, I just opened up my mic in case you had a question.
Okay, perfect. And just wanted to thank you all for your quick and diligent work to get us the initial investigation and report back to the council so we could figure out exactly what the best ways are to proceed. You know, this is a really serious docket once again. Procedurally looking at this, it actually will take some time to go through all of the proceedings and make sure that we have all of the stakeholders engaged and comments, et cetera, and the discovery period as well, that it actually won't wrap up until the end of this year. It looks like the hearing officer shall certify the record to the council for consideration no later than December 1st, 2021. There's just one section of this resolution that I just want to make clear, and that's on the discovery piece, because we've had issues with some of the previous Prudence investigations that I just want to read. That section 6, page 10 on the discovery piece says that all parties are strongly encouraged to provide complete, unambiguous, and non-evasive responses to requests for information. Failure to do so could cause unnecessary discovery disputes and may disrupt the procedural schedule outlined herein. So I just wanted to make that very clear that that's in this resolution, because I do want to stay on schedule and make sure that we have some type of resolution to this by the dates that are in this instrument. So that means that by December 1, 2021, I do want to have this for consideration to the council. I just want to make that point clear. Councilmember Giarrusso, I saw you popped on. Would you like to make any comments? Or you just wanted, you're just here?
I'm just here. I'm just here.
Okay, if there are no comments coming from the council or any questions, Aaron, I will turn it over to you to see if there's any public comment.
Yes, council member. I'm going to go ahead and read the comments related to the Prudence investigation and weatherization, since I think we've pretty much covered all the presentation aspects of both resolutions. So the first comment is from Andy Kowalczyk. He says, "Hello, council, and good morning. I want to express that I appreciate what this resolution represents in terms of investigating the full scope of the failures that took place during the Mardi Gras load shed event. I have two worries. I hope that this is a transparent investigation and that we, the public, and the city council are not presented with gigabytes of data classified as highly sensitive market data that becomes inadmissible, or data that could be useful in this investigation, but features redactions. We, the public, need a comprehensive investigation. And when the public's welfare is at stake, we need to be clear about the risk of important data being classified as market sensitive simply to avoid a thorough investigation of the load shed event and unnecessary curtailment of power for almost 10,000 ratepayers. Secondly, if there is a determination of culpability on behalf of E&O's management leadership, it needs to be accompanied by an appropriate action. If it results in a fine that can be written off and does not cost the utility, that is not a meaningful penalty. And worse, it does not have a deterrent effect, exposing NOLA's ratepayers to a repeat incident of the load shed event. These are my concerns, and I appreciate you hearing them. Thank you." The second comment is from Andrew Pierce McGuire. "I urge the City Council to adopt the RRPS, or a version of the measure that moves New Orleans energy usage to renewable resources even earlier than the RPS." Andy Kowalczyk, this is on weatherization. "Thanks, Council. I just wanted to say that I think this resolution could use a more comprehensive approach to this issue. What drove a lot of the energy demand during the load shed event is heating demand. It doesn't take a genius to understand that. In that respect, I don't feel that investigating the insulating a power plant for an annual winter peak is the most cost-effective solution. I don't think anyone can say that New Orleans has a glut of well-insulated homes in addition to a need for weatherized power plants. This is a clear case for an all-source solicitation for resources that can help mitigate winter peaks. Furthermore, things like energy efficiency, energy storage, as well as transmission investment can provide year-round benefits. Hypothetically, you can gold plate anything, and I'm worried that putting the focus solely on power plants is opening the door to gold plating and adding to the rate base for the utility. These are my concerns, and I appreciate you letting me express them here." And the last comment is from Logan Burke, who is staff with the Alliance for Affordable Energy. She says, during and after Winter Storm Uri, many in the region have begun to insist on weatherization of fossil fuel power plants. There are many potential problems with this so-called solution to the winter outages. First, weatherizing power plants does little to solve a crisis when there is a lack or deficit of the fuels used to generate due to demand or even pipeline issues. Second, weatherizing fossil-fueled power plants represents significant capital investments in fossil fuels, just as the country and this council are looking to phase out those assets. Additional investments there will simply be more stranded costs in a few years. Weatherizing these fossil-fueled plants also means ratepayer resources focused at the supply end of the problem rather than the demand end, where efficiency in weatherized homes not only reduce the strain on the grid in extreme weather events, but also protect customers in the case of outages. Finally, winterizing thermal power generation in the South comes with additional inefficiencies that will further cost ratepayers in the summer. While we understand the move to consider how Entergy can ensure resilient and reliable service to New Orleans, we urge the council to consider other ways to protect ratepayers. Councilmember, those are all of the comments.
All right, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Okay, so first I'm going to move for adoption of the Prudence Investigation Resolution. I'll make a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Drew. So all in favor, say aye.
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 All right, hearing no objection, that motion goes on to the full council now. And the next resolution I will move adoption on is the Weatherization Resolution. Can I get a second?
Second.
I think that was seconded by Councilmember Brossette. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Hearing no objection, that resolution now moves on to the full council. Thank you. All right, last item on our agenda is item number 6. And I'm actually really proud of this docket because it represents an essential element in preventing unnecessary busy work that really doesn't serve the public any good and actually allows us to continue to create savings for the ratepayers in the city. So this docket proposes the phasing out of unnecessary reports and old regulatory filings that all parties, interveners, the advisors, and Entergy New Orleans all agree are unnecessary and no longer relevant to today's regulatory environment. It is a cleanup docket that helps clear the decks of old and unused regulatory clutter so that our staff and advisors can focus on the issues that people want us to focus on: reliability, climate action, and affordability. I do want to thank our Curo staff. Aaron, you, and in particular, Bobby Mason have just been amazing and working on this, and really thank you. So I think Bobby had to rush off to another meeting. I know she's working hard, but Bobby, thank you so much, for your work on this, because it's taking quite some time to get to where we are, but we're making such a difference and really streamlining the work that Curo does and reducing our capacity on advisors and really gaining a lot more work product coming out of our Curo office. And Aaron, that's due to your leadership and due to building a great team, bringing on people like Bobby and the other fantastic women, I should say, who are part of your team. So with that, Aaron, I don't know if you would like to make a quick presentation on this. Yeah, I'll turn the floor over to you.
No, Councilmember, I think you covered it pretty well. My team is amazing. Bobby really carried this from start to finish. And we took the 52 roughly reports that Entergy provides to this council and came up with reporting requirements that make sense. Some of the reports were just outdated and didn't need to come in as often as they were coming in. But we've also added in every 2 years, the council can look at these reporting requirements again and refine them further so that we're not doing this every decade or so. So thank you for recognizing the work of the team and Chris, great women, and Chris.
And Chris, yes, of course, Chris. Hey, Chris. Exactly.
And I'm happy to take any questions.
No, I think it's great. And just so that everyone understands why this is, at the end of the day, leading to cost savings, is because all of these reports, dozens of reports, would then require our advisors to then look into, which then we would be charged for, the ratepayers are then charged for. And then Quorum has to spend time taking a look at those particular reports. Everybody has to sign off that they have been reviewed. And it's just, they're unnecessary reports that from the advocates to our Quorum office to Entergy New Orleans to our advisors all have agreed that it's just not, it's actually more busy work than really productive type of work that we need to be doing. So with that, I will make a motion to adopt this resolution on streamlining. Can I get a second, please?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Banks. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, hearing no objection, that resolution moves on now to the full council. The last item on our agenda is adjournment. So I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved by Councilmember Druso. Can I get a second?
Second.
Moved by Council Vice President Glapion. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, hearing no objection, we are